Intelligence sources indicated that the attack was greenlit by mid-tier Houthi commanders attempting to curry favor with Tehran by showcasing military might. But the failure and the subsequent U.S. retaliation left them isolated. Iranian leadership, when questioned, denied any involvement. Behind closed doors, however, messages were sent urging Houthi leadership to de-escalate. In the hours following the attack, Saudi and Emirati forces placed their own naval assets on high alert. Coalition warships repositioned throughout the Gulf of Aden, and joint task forces conducted emergency exercises. Israel, though not directly involved, offered satellite reconnaissance assistance and intercepted communications among Houthi field units. The diplomatic fallout began immediately. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency session with U.S. Ambassador Lisa Cartwright condemning the attack as a deliberate escalation against international maritime security. Russia and China offered muted responses, calling for restraint, but notably did not veto a resolution reaffirming freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. In Yemen, the consequences were immediate. Civilian populations near suspected Houthi bases began fleeing northward as rumors of further U.S. airstrikes spread. Aid groups temporarily suspended operations in certain areas, fearing reprisal attacks. Yet amid the chaos, pro-democracy factions within Yemen quietly celebrated what they saw as a long overdue check on Houthi aggression. President Biden addressed the nation later that day. Standing alongside senior military leaders, he reaffirmed America's commitment to protecting international waters and ensuring that acts of terrorism would not go unpunished. The USS Ramage stood its ground, he said, and those who wish to test the resolve of the United States Navy will find only one outcome: failure. Over the next 48 hours, additional airstrikes followed. Intelligence sharing agreements were activated among NATO allies. The Royal Navy dispatched 2 of its own warships to the Red Sea in a show of solidarity. France sent surveillance aircraft to Djibouti to help track remaining Houthi maritime assets. Interestingly, what began as a tactical error by the Houthis soon evolved into a broader strategic discussion. Military experts debated whether this marked the beginning of a shift in U.S. rules of engagement in the region. Would similar provocations now be met with direct retaliatory strikes? Was this a sign of a more assertive U.S. presence in the Gulf? In Tehran, silence. No official statement from the supreme leader. State media barely covered the event, but Western intelligence sources noted an unusual spike in encrypted communications traffic between Tehran and Sada, suggesting that behind the scenes there was panic. In Washington, Congress held briefings on the incident. Lawmakers from both parties applauded the Navy's restraint and effectiveness, but questioned how the Houthis managed to mount such a coordinated attack in the first place. Some pushed for stronger sanctions on Iranian arms shipments and increased funding for naval modernization. The attack on the USS Ramage was not just another flare-up in an already tense region. It became a defining moment, showcasing both the unpredictability of asymmetric warfare and the enduring might of the U.S. military. A reminder that in the vast chessboard of global conflict, one wrong move, like attacking the wrong ship, can have irreversible consequences. As the sun set on May 5, 2025, calm returned to the waters of the Red Sea. But beneath the surface, tension remained. Satellites continued to monitor Yemeni airspace. Naval destroyers maintained combat readiness. And deep within underground bunkers in Saada, Houthi leaders reckoned with a grim reality. They had made a mistake that would haunt them for years to come. In the days that followed, American naval dominance became a renewed focus of global attention. The incident revitalized conversations around advanced ship defense systems, artificial intelligence and threat detection, and the importance of maintaining a robust, responsive naval force. Foreign military officials requested joint training exercises, eager to learn how the U.S. Navy had handled the confrontation with such precision. In Yemen, the Houthi leadership faced backlash from within. Some commanders criticized the decision to attack a U.S. vessel at all, calling it reckless and ill-informed. Intelligence leaks showed internal discord, with some factions blaming others for faulty intelligence that led to the misidentification of the USS Ramage. Iran, facing growing pressure, began pulling back support, quietly dismantling some covert training camps and delaying shipments of weapons to the Houthis. While publicly denying involvement, Tehran's leadership grew increasingly wary of giving the U.S. any additional justification for direct strikes. It started in the early hours of May 5, 2025. A U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer, part of a routine maritime security operation in the Red Sea, picked up radar signals indicating multiple fast-approaching targets. At first, the crew assumed it was another swarm of Iranian-backed Houthi drones, an increasingly common threat in the region. But within seconds, it became clear. This was no ordinary harassment attempt. The ship was under coordinated assault. The Houthis, emboldened by recent propaganda victories and tactical successes against smaller maritime targets, made a critical miscalculation. They launched a direct attack on what they believed was a lightly armed logistics ship. But instead, they had targeted the USS Ramage, a fully armed Arleigh Burke-class destroyer equipped with the Aegis combat system, capable of tracking and eliminating multiple airborne threats simultaneously. The first wave consisted of 2 Iranian-made drones, flying low and fast over the water. The USS Ramage's radar systems locked on immediately. Within seconds, the Phalanx CIWS, a 20mm close-in weapon system, roared to life, shredding the incoming threats midair. The explosions lit up the dark horizon, revealing the outlines of fast attack boats following behind. These weren't random pirates or militia vessels. These were Houthis in Iranian-supplied speedboats, armed with RPGs, heavy machine guns, and shoulder-fired missiles. They moved in coordinated formations, attempting to flank the U.S. ship. But they underestimated both the range and lethality of the Navy's response. As the boats closed within 2,000 meters, the USS Ramage opened up with its MAG-45 5-inch gun. Shells screamed through the air, exploding near the oncoming boats. One, then another, burst into flames and capsized. The remaining speedboats scattered, some turning back toward Yemeni waters. Then came the second wave, this time a larger drone, likely a Shahed 136 variant, modified for maritime strike. It came in from higher altitude, perhaps an attempt to exploit a blind spot in the destroyer's radar profile. But there were no blind spots. The Aegis combat system acquired the target and a Standard Missile 2 was launched. It struck the drone head-on, disintegrating it mid-air. At this point, the crew of the USS Ramage knew they weren't dealing with a one-off. This was a premeditated, complex attack. Over the next hour, a total of 8 drones and 5 fast attack boats attempted to breach the destroyer's defenses. None succeeded. But what happened next sent shockwaves through the region. Satellite imagery later confirmed that the Houthis had not only targeted the USS Ramage by mistake. They believed they were attacking a resupply ship with minimal defenses, hoping to score a symbolic win against U.S. naval forces. In doing so, they triggered a full-scale military response. Minutes after the final drone was neutralized, the USS Ramage received authorization to initiate retaliatory strikes. Tomahawk cruise missiles were launched from vertical launch systems on board. Their targets, known Houthi drone manufacturing facilities, weapons storage depots, and radar installations located in northern Yemen. The missiles hit their targets with devastating precision. Footage captured from surveillance drones showed entire compounds obliterated within seconds of impact. Flames lit the skies above Sada, the Houthi stronghold. Panic spread among their ranks as command centers lost communication and power. Simultaneously, CENTCOM mobilized additional assets. F-18 Super Hornets from the nearby USS Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier flew sorties over Yemeni territory, conducting reconnaissance and ready to strike if needed. An MQ-9 Reaper drone, already patrolling the region, tracked surviving Houthi vessels retreating to coastal hideouts. The Pentagon issued a rare nighttime press briefing. Rear Admiral James Fulton confirmed the attack on the USS Ramage and emphasized that no U.S. personnel were injured, thanks to the ship's superior defense capabilities and rapid response. He warned that any further aggression against U.S. or allied maritime vessels would be met with overwhelming force. Meanwhile, across social media platforms, video clips captured from the Ramage's deck cameras began circulating. The thunderous roar of the CIWS engaging targets, the sharp, decisive launch of cruise missiles from vertical tubes, the cheers from crew members as the last hostile drone exploded, all painted a vivid picture of dominance and preparedness. military analysts quickly labeled the incident a turning point in the ongoing proxy conflicts in the region. The Houthis, previously emboldened by successful attacks on commercial tankers and lightly armed patrol vessels, had now overreached. They had struck a warship designed for exactly this kind of engagement, and lost spectacularly. The American public, meanwhile, rallied behind the Navy. Recruitment numbers saw a sudden uptick, and the USS Ramage's crew was celebrated across the country. Several sailors appeared on national news shows, speaking with pride about how they defended their ship and their country. By the end of that week, the Navy had established a temporary maritime control zone around the southern Red Sea. Any unauthorized aerial or naval asset entering the zone risked immediate engagement. The message was clear: U.S. waters were not to be tested. And yet, analysts cautioned that this incident was not the end, but a beginning. A signal that proxy groups and their backers were willing to test boundaries, sometimes recklessly, but also a demonstration that the United States was no longer playing a purely reactive game. On May 5, 2025, the Houthis attacked the wrong U.S. Navy ship. What they got in return was not just a military lesson, but a geopolitical earthquake.